Hello and welcome to part 2 of Tough Conversations with CxOs, a podcast all about how businesses can be really intentional about their ways of working and be more responsive to what's going on in the market. I'm Alexis Williams, Head of Strategic Alliances at Atlassian. I'm here with Steve Davis of Accenture, and today we are joined by special guest Ken Spangler, Executive Vice President of IT and CIO of Global Operations Technologies at FedEx. And together, we're sitting down live at FedEx World Hub in Memphis, Tennessee.
So Ken, I want to go back to one of the early discussions we had around, ownership of the change, right? And how many people, I remember Henry asking, how many people am I going to have to hire? Because people have been coming to me and saying, if you go down this agile path, you're going to have to hire, 30, 50, whatever number of people. And I said, I think it's 0 because the changing roles that you've already talked about. But let's talk for a few minutes about owning the change within FedEx. And ultimately what it results in is I've not really been hands-on with your team, or Josh, who really played more of a hands-on role even than I did, for the last 18 months, right? Your team continues to drive it and did so even years ago, right before we took on the enterprise challenge at FedEx Ground. Talk a little bit about that, how, really it was a FedEx-owned transformation, not outsourced transformation.
Yeah, a couple of things. I would say, passion and process, but I'm going to tell a story to start this, and that is, if I had $1 for every time I had a group or an individual come to me and says, we're all in, we want to do this, and all I need is to add 14 more people, and not in a negative way. Obviously we have a very engaging team, very good culture. So sometimes we can challenge each other and kid each other, but sometimes those kidding is direct, right? Mm-hmm. And I would say, in a really nice way, I would say, so what part of a lean agile process where we eliminate ways to reduce context switching says that it costs us more? And that literally is how we would always start the discussion. And I probably had that discussion 30 times. Okay, different parts of the enterprise, obviously I'm involved all over the enterprise. Mm-hmm. And as soon as you get that discussion, you talk about how it is, and a lot of times it's repositioning, what were roles or jobs versus assignments, but also it's, we don't need these other roles anymore, but we do need these new ways to work. It was new ways of working, not additive ways of working. And so that was key. So we were doing it internally, owned inside FedEx. We had expertise, help, and vision and experience outside, but we owned it. And we put the roles and responsibilities in. Remember what I said, the 4 people process? People was number 1, right? So that was a key part of it. And then, on top of it, I will say, I also got lucky at, we're talking about the enterprise level here, but at the FedEx Ground level, going all the way back, when we first started at FedEx Ground, I had a director reporting to me that really was our process person. So she, instead of reporting to one of my vice presidents, she reported directly to me because she drove the consistent process across all my vice president groups. And one day we're just having a regular one-on-one. She comes in and she slides about a 4 or 5 page deck across the table to me. And, her and I have worked together for decades, literally. And she knows I'm an analytical type person. Normally I'd look at it or I'd read it later and give her some feedback, and we'd go back and forth on it until we figure out what we're going to do. So while she's talking to me about another subject, I'm just like, real quickly phaging through it. And I see right away what she was recommending is we need to start an agile enablement office, and we can do it with these existing resources we have. We're going to reallocate a manager level group, and here's how we can do it. So basically it was a proposal that says, if we're going to do this, we need to major in it. Okay. There's jobs, not assignments. And also, we're going to a more efficient methodology. It doesn't mean it takes more resources. We just need to reallocate existing resources. And so literally in no time at all, while we're talking about another subject, I just close it up. I slide it back across the table at her. And I said, hey, Linda, I don't have to read just to go back and forth. I just wish we'd have done this a year ago. How soon do you think you could do it? And that's how the whole thing came to be. So we started an Agile Enablement Office, which really started a principle of Agile coaching. It was just started simple with just Agile coaching. So tie it all together to Steve's question, and that is, 1, we said we would own it inside. 2, it isn't some overhead that creates a whole bunch of new positions or new overhead. It's not. It's the opposite. And 3, you got to major in it, not minor in it. You got to go all in. And that was a really good example. That Agile Enablement Office, which is in place to this day with a different name, is super powerful.
To put context on it that maybe some of the audience will understand, too often in corporate America, I hear people having a +1.
Yep.
Right? What's your +1? That's minoring in it. Maybe not even minoring in it, but taking a side course over here, right?
Yep.
And so when Ken talks about majoring in it, that was a big leap. And there are a number of organizations now that do the same thing, follow that pattern. But at the time that started, very few organizations. In 2016, we're having the courage to actually create paid positions within the company that were taking on what consultants were being hired to do for other organizations.
Yeah, and here we sit, in 2023, and I have a really good example a week ago. I have a little small side gig. I'm an adjunct professor at Carnegie Mellon University, and I teach something called Strategy Lab. And we just had, and it's just in modules, so it's not like I have the time to do this like on a regular class. It's where I do either 2 half days or a whole day kind of thing. And anyways, we had it last week. And we were talking about, as part of, it's business, creating a business strategy and technology strategy, and how they have to be interconnected, but how you execute. And one of the students who, has been in the business world and has a management role, and said, we tried to adopt SAFe and become, a lean agile enterprise utilizing SAFe, but the overhead killed us. And we literally stopped. We didn't do it. And it just made me go back and say, wow, I'm so glad we caught and made those decisions and had the discipline to say, it's not additional positions, right? And it's just different. And so what they weren't really driving is the change. They were driving it as all new. Yeah. And I was thinking, wow, that, we talked about a lot of maybe a different way to think about it and how they could go back at it. But I really thought, wow, what a waste, the tremendous waste that is. And so here it is, years after we were faced with that. And I looked and heard that very story last week, and it made me cringe.
Yeah.
I would love to get your perspective, Ken, on companies that do execution exceptionally well. What are they doing right that other companies may not be? What do you really think is the it factor, or do you think there's an it factor to execution?
So I'm gonna answer your question in 2 buckets. First of all, it was just at the enterprise level, before we broke it down into a limited number of portfolios. If you started adding up the different initiatives in the many portfolios, like 50 or more portfolios, it was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. So eventually, at that level, when we drove enterprise business agility, we got it down to 10 portfolios only, and only 5 of them were real large portfolios. The other ones were kind of small ones we kept separate for a reason. So that, first of all, really reduced the scale, that there wasn't governance bodies everywhere you looked. Every region, every sub-region, every subco. So we really reduced at that level. Then your question's about, we get to one horizontal, the things that aren't an individual, the things that are consistent for the enterprise, we call them ESIs, Enterprise Strategic Initiatives. When we first started pulling them together, and mind you, we got that list really leaned down. There was, I think the first crack at it, there was 66 items, which we knew was insane. Okay, that's not it. And just by coincidence, it was cut in half. The second round was 33. And then we got it down to 11, then we got it down to 9. And at that point, it's a little bit of a bundling strategy. So there truly was only 9 of them. Mm-hmm. But we had like things together. So we created in there, we called it bundling, right? We knew what things should be bundled together. So we're not governing things separately. They're governed as one set of value. They create consistent value, even if there's multiple components or across those other portfolios. And right now, we're doing a next release. We're updating it. Again, it's one of our One FedEx strategy. So now it's a whole different strategy in the corporation. It's One FedEx. We now have a value portfolio. We have a program called Drive. Drive's an unbelievably, important part of the value of creating value in FedEx going forward. So we know what the value of everything is worth, and we're after billions of dollars of savings. So with all that information, the one that our chief transformation executive is leading, and we're running the process right now, gets us down to 6. So right now, the entire corporation under the One FedEx strategy with this value framework we have under Drive, The one we're updating right now will have 6 enterprise strategic initiatives. And those are, again, it's a bundling strategy, but those are the things that are linked by value.
Yeah, quite a difference from the 66. And you talk about relentless prioritization all the time.
Yeah.
Were you involved in sort of helping at that level on the Accenture side?
So yes, only from a facilitation perspective, right? Not from a content perspective, not what goes into the strategy. But I remember, in that meeting with the CEOs, I used the terminology ruthless prioritization. And when I say ruthless prioritization, it has nothing to do with fairness, right? And I think there was a clap in the in the audience. Like, we're not here to be fair to everybody. We're here to run a business. We've got to be a bit ruthless about it. Within those portfolios and those hundreds of initiatives that Ken talked about, each portfolio to varying degrees, but we've tried to really drive home the principles of it's not an unlimited backlog. Like, you don't need 10 years worth of work laid out. Maybe that 3 to 5 year horizon is okay, but even that changes, right? And so that was, our role was just teaching patterns and helping facilitate, hey, I'm not the expert, but that looks like too many.
Yeah, and sometimes as important as all that is, as Steve just said, sometimes it was even just giving us confidence that this was a fight worth having. You know what I mean? And I will say this, early on, even when we started to shrink it, it was based on value and you had to have ruthless prioritization, but there was always this, I call this principle, based on what? Based on what? And everybody had their own, everybody had it. Remember, every one of these had a business case. It's not like we had things, people were flying in and there was no business. They all had a business case and they all said they were worth something. But the certification and consistency of that, again, was different. And that's where, again, through common lean portfolio management and then enterprise portfolio management, and while I talked about the beginning parts of having ESIs, what we said was, right after that, and I did mention earlier, was we needed a value management framework. We needed certified value. So now we have certified value. That's what this DRIVE program is all about. It's so powerful. It's incredible. But now that's the what we should work on. And the how we do it, we're linking together. So the what and the how are now coming together.
And maybe just for a little context for the audience, and I love the certified value versus perceived value. What does that mean to FedEx? Like, how did you identify what certified value is versus perceived value or interpreted value?
There's a whole process, but basically we have a strategic finance function that ultimately has to certify it. Okay, so there's other parts of it. We have in our program, we have a tech clearinghouse and we have a finance clearinghouse. Okay, so as it goes through, the tech clearinghouse is more about understanding what it's really going to take, how much of it crosses portfolios and could take multiple portfolios, and a lot of that, stuff that you would think is tech clearinghouse. But once we go through that, and it's been, broken down, the components to be broken into, the finance clearinghouse certifies and says, yes, that we have, the finance certified. So it's really just a consistent process of how we go about it. Otherwise, everybody came in with their own business case, and their own business case was left to interpretation of what they think value is or not. And now it's there's a methodology and there's a certification in that methodology.
Yeah, it's really a three-legged stool, right?
Yep.
I mean, between the business, technology, and finance.
Yep.
Right, coming to that certified value.
Yeah, that's interesting. So another question I had is, I know this is publicly available, but on the One FedEx Transformation, how are you tracking towards that initiative right now?
Well, I can only say publicly, what we say in our earnings. We had a strong first quarter, and part of it is because of the value the DRIVE is generating. So as Raj, publicly talks, or CFO talks, or anything we talk about publicly, DRIVE has been incredibly successful, and we've been delivering, against it as we said we would, and we continue to find more and more value because of the framework and the certification process. And so, it's very successful. It's a multi-year journey. So we're early on, but we've already found a lot of value. And again, I don't want to get into the details here, but we've already said, more than $1 billion already. And in this fiscal year, our fiscal year is a June to May fiscal year, and we're making tremendous progress.
Well, I think the key there to highlight is that, there is continuous learning and adaptation going on at FedEx. It's not just that the how is, what was implemented before. It's continually learning and adapting and moving that forward. And if there's anything that I'm the most proud of about being a part of that journey, is that it continues on well beyond me being there in the building.
Yeah, and I mean, I would say even me, it's bigger than all of us, and the fact that Drive is a program to truly transform FedEx, transform the business, and it's super powerful, it's super important. Everybody's aligned around it. Again, we have the scale now. We're this massive global enterprise. We have the scale that we can drive different levels of efficiency, and to have a program focused on that, that's a winning formula anywhere. Mm-hmm. And so, that's really the opportunity in front of us, and really why, we just celebrated our 50th anniversary this year, and it's why everybody's saying is we're more excited about the next 50 than we were the first 50, and that's the reason why.
Yeah, that's truly exciting times. I was going to ask, what are you most excited about with this initiative just going so well since it started? What are you most excited about for FedEx in the coming years? Because it's not just a transformation one and done. This is more how are we continually becoming the better and best version of ourselves. What gets you most excited about FedEx's future?
I'm going to answer that two ways. First is, what remains the same. Passionate people with a tremendous culture living what we call the Purple Promise. And that means I will make every FedEx experience outstanding. And that certainly is to our customers, but it also means our internal experiences. And so, that has from Fred, that DNA comes from Fred Smith for sure. As one individual who founded the company, you think, well, it has to be about lots of teams. Sure it is, absolutely. It lives and breathes by 500 plus thousand team members, but that's DNA of the company. So that excited me in the past. It excites me just as much in the future. But I do believe One FedEx, it's an incredibly powerful strategy for the time we're in. The world changes at even a faster rate than ever, and our opportunity to deliver increasing levels of value is right in front of us. It's very tangible. It's very doable. It's hard work. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's hard, everything. In an enterprise of this scale, everything is hard work. But it just will create higher and higher levels of value as it can continue to go forward. And that's super powerful. But then I would wrap it all together and say, and wow, am I glad that we drove, and for the people who understand or the people that don't, that drove consistency as a lean, agile enterprise. Because it's the way we work, right? And now that we have Drive and we know the values, and it creates a lot of important areas to focus on, the way we work is truly a lean, agile methodology, and we can get more done in less time. And oh, by the way, we're simplifying the enterprise as One FedEx, so then it's an exponential multiplier. The processes are allowing us to get much more done, and the simplification will continue to accelerate what we can get done. So, the productivity and the ability to move even faster and get value faster, it's a flywheel effect, right? It gets spinning up to speed, and we'll go faster and faster, and it'll have a self-fulfilling part of it. So I am extremely excited about that.
I love it. I have one more question, and then Steve, I'll turn it over to you for any other questions. But you led with people and with culture as what stays the same. And I love that that's what you led with in that answer. In your perspective, how has FedEx's culture played a role in the One FedEx transformation and allowing you to be so successful? What is unique about the culture that really has set you apart and gotten you the results that you've wanted to see?
Clearly I said it's hard work still, and there'll be a lot of hard work, and there'll be a lot of, challenges along the way. But the reality of it is, it's the passion that people have in FedEx because what we do matters. And that's it. People always ask me, obviously it's a great brand name. It's recognizable anywhere you go in the world and all that. A lot of things to be proud of. I could probably create a list and we could talk for 10 minutes about the things I'm proud of. But the reality of it is, it comes down to me as simple as what we do matters. The world depends on us. We're a fabric of the world. And, Fred came up, and I'm pretty sure it was Fred who said it the first time when the pandemic hit, and, the challenges of the, people being, in lockdown and things like that all over the world. And what we do, we were working harder than ever. Our volumes were higher than ever. We're setting, record volumes. We're flying we're sitting here looking at these beautiful airplanes. We're flying everything we could because the world needed us. Fred had this line that says, "This is who we are and what we do." And that tagline that came up in COVID is the perfect description of how I felt for 30 some years. This is, and look, we're sitting in here, this incredible airport, this incredible hub we have that's miles long. This is a wide body aircraft right behind us that handles, massive amounts of weight, a lot of packages, a lot of freight. And, the things that move in these airplanes matter to the world. And so people are passionate about it. And that's why no matter what the next challenge is, FedExers step up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great description of, in the beginning you asked what was my favorite part of FedEx, the people, right? Ken, my last question for you is, when I started working with FedEx, I was working against the tagline of, we want to change lives for the better. People spend a third of their day or more at work. And if that can be made better, then they're going to show up at home better and in their communities better. Do you have any stories that you would like to share about how that has had impact in people's lives because we changed, and made their work life better? How it changed their lives?
I alluded to a couple of these earlier, so I don't want to sound repetitive, but I will say this, and this is another one of those things that I think if you were, depending who you were interviewing in the enterprise, you would get different answers.
Sure.
But my answer I'm certain of, because I've lived it and been out there, but we probably haven't publicized it enough inside. But here's the answer. Everywhere, when we really started to drive business agility and then turn into enterprise business agility, everywhere I went, not 90% of the time, 100% of the time, the teams that do this hard work, because when you're not in doing the hard work, it always looks easy, right? Yeah. But the people that are doing this hard work, every time said, wow, is this a better way to work? Wow, is this, it just, more control, more ability to deliver rapidly, less waste, all the things we talked about. So number one is all the people saying, wow, is this a better way to work? And then number two, and I alluded to this earlier also, is, and I'll never forget it, I was in our Colorado Springs Development Center, and one of a team member I knew, a lady I'd known for a long time, she walked up and just said, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. And her quote was, it makes us feel like a small, nimble company again, which we'd grown to be. We're a behemoth, right? And, each of our, even at the federated model, federation is complex, but each of these big businesses were multi-billion-dollar behemoths by themselves, let alone the enterprise, right? And so for somebody to say, we feel like a small, nimble company again, said that they love the ability, how it makes them feel. They're enjoying their work more. And then we know through the flow metrics and so many other things, we're getting a lot more done. And then we see it in the pandemic, our ability, context switching is part of business, but the waste of context switching pretty much went away.
Yes.
So again, so I gave you a bunch but when you line these all up together, it wasn't like I'd hear good here and then I'd go on that trip and I'd hear bad. I just didn't hear the bad. Everybody's like, no, I'd never go back. And that's the last thing I would say is, if I, it's another one of those things, if I had $1 for it, right? If I had $1 for every time a person said, I never want to go back to the way we were working. Yeah. And, where you got 198 initiatives and everybody's fighting about what's the louder one and, heck with that. And, and especially, when you're building software and the complexity of it, there's one thing I call the laws of physics of IT. Complexity is the answer. If your complexity goes up, your speed and cost are negatively impacted. Yeah. If you manage your complexity down, your speed and your cost are positively impacted. And this is a way to manage complexity down. And another one of the things I think is not very well understood, especially at the high executive level, not that everybody should, but that's another reason that our team members that are in the trenches doing the work, they see it. And so, I'm not maybe as dramatic as saying make their lives completely better, but it definitely makes their work experience just completely different. Yeah. It's positive.
Well, thank you, Ken. I asked that question because I said specifically when I meet with executives, I take a science-based approach. Mm-hmm. We don't talk about feelings. But when you're evaluating it after, right, those are some of the more impactful stories you hear is how people have changed. And you and I both can know people who have within the company and who have left the company, and I see this all over, say, well, I want to get involved in this kind of work, right? Because it changed my life. And so I still think that's true. I still don't think you can, when you're building the case for change, I don't think you can lead with people's lives are going to be changed and feel much better at work. But it is a outstanding and for me, a life-changing result of the hard work that we did.
I have to, the way you set that up, I have to add one thing then.
Okay.
At the SAFE conference this year in Nashville, we had one of our managers that comes from her background as the FedEx Ground portfolio, but she was doing a session on flow and how we manage flow, right? And it was well done. She's great. She's been doing this for a long time. She's just super at it. And I won't say who, but one of the really big brand names, one of the really big companies, some of their people came up to me and said afterwards in a keynote right before we were going on stage,
right,
and said, wow, we thought we had flow. We thought we managed it well. And we realized, wow, we're not even close to that. And that gives our people pride.
Yes.
When you compare and you go out and benchmark, and I've gotten to, speak to a lot of different companies as part of this, because obviously we work with a lot of companies at FedEx, and whether it's, any different reason we get called, we always will collaborate and share. It's just part of who we are. And so I've gotten to see that at my level. But when our team members get to see that, and you look at that brand name, it's another brand name, you go, wow, I respect that company. They're world class at what they do. They're huge IT, huge business. And they're like, wow, we're not even in the league. That makes our team feel really good.
Yeah, I love that.
Thanks for sharing that. A lot of pride. It's an amazing journey that you guys have been on, and kudos to you, Ken, for really leading the charge there. Thank you for being with us today. This is amazing. This is an amazing space, and we're just so glad to have been able to talk with you.
Can I say I'm sure the production team will maybe be editing and splicing, because we've had some noises because we're, in a hangar at our hub, and we have airplanes starting up and airplanes going by. But it's just, this is kind of one of the places where commerce comes together in the world and amazing things happen. So I'm glad we could have you here and host you here and put up with, for the audience, if you have to hear a little bit of noise in the background, it's worth it. There's some amazing things that go on here every single day.
Yep.
And when you come here at night, there's massive numbers of planes going in and out. And so it's a place that, so much of the important things that move in the world come through here.
Love it.
Love it. Well, thank you both.
Thank you for having us.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us for Tough Conversations with CxOs, a podcast from Atlassian and Accenture. Thank you as well to our special guest, Ken Spangler of FedEx, for sharing his insights today. You can check out more about Ken, as well as the work Atlassian and Accenture are doing on enterprise agility, using the link in our show notes. We'll be back with more conversations soon. Follow us now on your podcast app, and you won't miss an episode.